Guys, looks like someone at Boat heard us loud and clear. This is it. This is the company's attempt to win over the rapidly growing audiophile community in India. Welcome, the Boat Nirvana X. So the Nirvana X is Boat's first collaboration with Novels, a brand that most audiophiles are already aware of. Now, internally, the setup includes one dynamic driver and one balanced armature made by Novels. Plus, you get support for a Bluetooth high-res codec like LDAC. All of this for a very affordable price of $27.99. But the question that we need to ask is, if these drivers are tuned well and if this is actually audiophile grade. Well, that's exactly what I'm going to try to address in this review of the Nirvana X, and I hope that it's helpful for you. Alright, if you're here for the first time, I'm Eshat, you're watching Track and Take English, your destination for detailed, incisive gadget reviews. First things first, the Nirvana X's case and buds design is exactly the same as the Boat Airdoves 800. That's obviously one cost-cutting measure, but the one different thing that Boat has done is that they provide different colors that you can pick from. Anyway, the case is made entirely of plastic. It feels sturdy enough. The hinge doesn't have any metal in it. You also get a Type-C port for charging, of course, and you get a proper Bluetooth pairing button on the inside, which is something that I really appreciate. Although I feel like Boat doesn't believe in any minimalism because the Boat logo is here, the Novels logo is here, and so is the high-res audio wireless stamp. Alright, there's something that I always do, and that is a live yank test to see how strong the magnets are, and I feel like they're not going to be very strong. Let's see. Yeah, that didn't take too... Thank you, Tejas. That didn't take too much effort. Now, the one good thing is that the buds have IPX5 rating, which make them sweat resistant, so great for workouts. But what's also important for workouts is the fit. And at least for me, which is a subjective thing, is that, the fit was good and they're pretty firm and they don't fall out very easily either. I also do like the angular design and the flat stem on the sides, and I feel like it's a missed opportunity that Boat hasn't added slide controls for, volume. But there are tap controls and they're finely tuned, so even a slight touch makes it pause music and play music. It might be a little too fine sometimes because you can accidentally trigger it as well. Also, with these buds, you get in-ear detection, so taking them out pauses music. And the latency for this has been tuned fairly well. Now, before I talk about the rest of the features and the sound quality, if you haven't already subscribed to our channel, go ahead and give us your support, because reviews like these definitely is something that we love doing for you guys. Now, to include the dual driver setup at a price of under rupees 3,000, Boat has decided to not include ANC. Now, I consider this a fair trade-off to keep the costs low, especially if it sounds good. But before I talk about the sound itself, let me tell you about some of the other features. You get a low latency mode for gaming, which works at 60 milliseconds. And I tested it out and it works fairly well. In my time, I couldn't notice any time lag between me actually pulling the trigger and the short sound being registered in my ears when I was playing Call of Duty Mobile. But the fundamental problem is that I couldn't figure out how to switch on Beast mode because there's no toggle in the app itself. Then when I was playing around with it, I realized that I just had to long press the right button and it would switch on to Beast mode, and there's an audio prompt for it, which is very helpful. Now, since I've brought up the app, let me talk about the Boat Hearables app that you need to install on your Android phone if you want to change the settings with these buds. The design is pretty clean and you can easily understand all of the settings and features that are there within the app itself. For example, there are two different equalizer modes, and I will talk about the differences between these modes when I talk about the sound signature. But apart from that, there are multiple toggles, one for the spatial mode, one for the adaptive EQ mode, for the multi-point connectivity and in-ear detection as well. The second page gives you the option to change the function of the single tap, the double tap, and the triple tap. Of course, you can also update the buds from the app, and while the app is functional, there are a few bugs that I faced. For example, even if I was wearing the buds, it would keep getting disconnected in the app. I mean, the music would continue playing, but it would keep getting disconnected. In fact, sometimes it would not recognize the right earbud is on, and therefore it would switch off your access to certain functions and features. There's also no toggle to switch on LDAC off or on from the app itself, and it doesn't even show up in the Bluetooth settings page. And LDAC would keep dropping as well constantly. And therefore, when I was testing the buds, and if LDAC would drop off, then I had to go into the developer settings in my Pixel 9 Pro XL to actually switch on LDAC. Now, here's one more thing that you need to note. LDAC works at an adaptive bitrate by default. I tried switching on to the highest bitrate, which is 990 kbps, and the audio wouldn't play, it would keep skipping tracks. Regardless, for the bugs that I specifically faced with the app, I would want Boat to fix them in a future update. Hopefully they do that. Alright, time for the sound signature, and I'm repeating it once again. The premise is very straightforward. You get dual drivers inside each housing. One Novell's balanced armature and one dynamic driver along with LDAC Bluetooth High-res codec support. Now moving on, by default what you get is the Boat house tuning, which also comes with its own equalizer and a few preset EQs and custom EQ as well. The second tuning that you get is the Novell's audiophile grade tuning, which unfortunately you cannot EQ. And finally, there's also adaptive EQ, which uses Mimi's technology, which is something that's used by a lot of brands out there. Now, as expected, Boat's very own house tuning is dark, it's bloated, it's messy, and it's something that I am really not a fan of. But the moment you switch to the Novell's Curve, you are treated to a sound that is worthy of the dual driver setup that you get with these buds. I define the sound signature as a mild U-shaped sound, but it does have its fair share of flaws. But let's talk about the pros first. To begin with, the imaging is good. In Linkin Park's Points of Authority, I could individually pick out the sounds of Chester's vocals, the multiple guitars, the drums, the keyboards, and the synthesizers, and of course the sampling as well. What's also surprisingly decent is the sound staging, especially for a budget truly wireless earbuds. Ek Naditi from the movie Mirza is like a gorgeous composition by Shankar Ehsaan Loy, and not very widely appreciated unfortunately, but it should be. Now this song has a mix of instruments and vocals and some unique sounds, folk sounds that are placed in a fairly wide soundscape, and I felt like the Nirvana X did a decent job of ensuring that the soundscape was created, especially for a pair of truly wireless earbuds that cost under Rs 3,000. And the final good thing about the sound is definitely the fast bass attack that you get with it. Even in a complex track like by Thundercat, where the bass can get really tough to reproduce at that pace and the timing can be missed by many truly wireless earbuds, especially under 5,000 rupees, this one does a commendable job. The problem begins with the treble. It is a little too sharp for my taste, and you know what? I am somebody who actually likes a little bit of extra shimmer and sparkle in the treble, but this one is a little too hot for my liking. And since one cannot EQ the Novell's mode, it kind of makes it worse. They should have given that option. Also, one thing I noticed is that the upper mids sometimes feel a little shouty, especially in James Blake's Limit to Your Love, and he has this tendency to sort of over-enunciate the word to and make it slightly louder, and that can get a little grating at times. But that's my only problem with the mids. Otherwise, they're fine. They're not too recessed, which is good. As for the technicalities and dynamics in the music reproduction, I feel like it did a fairly good job for a pair of truly wireless earbuds that cost under Rs 3,000. And because of that, I feel like Boat has the right idea with this. This is a good first attempt at trying to create and trying to win over the audiophiles, I feel. Of course, a little bit more fine-tuning and we should reach there. Hopefully, Boat can do that. Alright, now these buds have 4 mics and I'm going to wear them right now, and they're connected to my Pixel 9 Pro XL, and I'm going to record audio and you can listen to it live. So now I'm recording audio on the Pixel 9 Pro XL, and the audio is now switching to this mic. So you can hear the difference between the two. Obviously, this is a professional studio mic and it's not going to sound like that. But these 4 mics do a fairly decent job of cutting out, the environmental sounds, which is good. And it doesn't make me sound robotic, but it does put me in a vacuum, which is something that you can clearly hear. Now, one thing I quickly want to talk about is the spatial mode on these buds. Now, it doesn't work with LDAC on, so it switches to the Boat House EQ. Boat's House EQ is dark by default. The spatial mode does add some space to it and some, sense of spaciousness. But honestly, it's something that I'm not a fan of in general on other truly wireless earbuds as well. Even multi-point connectivity works with LDAC off, which is fine, but multi-point connectivity works well. But when they're connected to 2 devices, you have to pause whatever you're watching or listening to on the first device so that you can play it on the next device, and the audio switches seamlessly. The same is not true for phone calls, because when you get a phone call, the first source automatically pauses playing audio on that source, and then the audio switches to the phone call. Alright, now about the battery life, Boat claims that you get 40 hours of battery life from the buds and the case included. It doesn't break down how much the buds gives you and how much the case gives you. Anyway, don't worry, I've tested it out, and in my testing what I noticed is that you can expect about 7 to 7.5 hours of playback from these buds at one stretch, which also means that you can get about 4 to 5 charge cycles with the case themselves. So overall, I'd say that this is pretty good battery life. So overall, I feel like this is a good value for money budget truly wireless earbuds. The tuning is mostly good with a few flaws that I hope that Boat can iron out in the next version of the Nirvana X. I'm guessing it should be called the Nirvana X2. And I'm kind of keenly looking forward to that one, considering this one's surprised me. Now, do I recommend it? If you're somebody who's been waiting for a pair of Bose Truly Wireless earbuds with good sound, then I think this is definitely worth recommending, because it's definitely not the best sounding Truly Wireless earbuds under 3000, but it's in the top 5, which is something that I could never say about a Bose product before. And that's where I'd like to end this review, and I hope that it was helpful for you. If it was, I'd love to know your comments and thoughts about the product in the comment section. And I'll see you guys in the next one. Until then, keep tracking and stay safe.